All right, welcome to Average Joe's podcast. This is the fourth mini episode in our mini series about the rule changes for the upcoming 2017 season. I'm joined today by
I'm Hunter Ford, reporting from VCU.
Dylan Fettig, coming out of Petoskey, Michigan.
And I'm Felix Peroni, walking around outside of Columbus, Ohio.
and I am Zygmus Maloney in Chicago, and this is Average Joe's podcast. So in this episode, we're talking about the burden ball rule and the burden throw instead of a shot clock, and as well as we'll touch on the attack line distance. So, Dylan, why don't you go ahead and introduce your proposal real quick?
I propose that we switch from the shot clock each side of the court to a burden ball rule. So basically, there would be 9 balls from the start of play. And the team that has the majority of balls, so 5 or more, has the burden to throw to relieve themselves of the majority of balls. So if you have 7 balls, you have to throw 2 or 3 balls.
Only to remove the majority, essentially.
Yeah, and it's the original majority. So whenever the shot clock person starts counting,
Okay.
that is what they have to remove. So you have 7 balls, you have to throw 3, but if there are 4 you still only have to remove 3, and then your throw count resets again.
Okay. So why don't we just launch into, does anyone have any particular cons before we get into anything else on this?
Yeah. I got a couple things we can talk about with that. At the end of the year, post-nationals, we kind of experimented a little bit at VCU. We essentially did 2 styles of it. One where it was you get rid of the majority. So as Dylan put it, if you have 7 balls, you have to get down to at least 4 in order to get rid of your majority. And the shot, in this case, the clock keeps going until you get rid of that majority. And then the other version that we did was where if you had the burden, you were just the only side with a shot clock. So we played with an LAZ with that still, but if you had the burden, you were the only one that had the responsibility to throw. So you could just throw 1 at a time until you lost your burden. And the biggest thing that I think that I see as difficult with this is that given the court sizes that we play on, like a full-size college or high school basketball court, it can make it kind of difficult, especially when we get into very small number situations for both sides, especially. Like, so for example, if you get in a one-on-one situation and the balls were reset over to your side, for example, so you receive all the balls because the other team didn't get rid of their burden. Now you're one player with 9 balls, and you got to get rid of your burden at that point with, whether it's a 10 or 15-second clock. I don't know if we're going to change that or not. But you do that, and now it just becomes you're playing keep away with balls, essentially, and you're just kind of kicking them all over across the court in some instances, and you essentially kind of get penalized for winning, the balls over in that sort of sense. Because now it's a lot more difficult for you to manage in a one-on-one situation than it is under the current system that we have. So
it's a good thread to this conversation is to keep in mind that both the shot clock as a current and the burden rule is a preventive measure for stalling. So it's a lot of times the burden clock might not be in effect. The burden clocker, burden shouter might not be doing it because people are throwing regularly and not really giving it up. It only comes in that situation when people are trying to milk the clock. Especially, and it's sometimes it's not in effect. Whereas the shot clock in our current one, sometimes it doesn't matter. When teams are throwing every 5, 10 seconds, it's okay. But when people start going up until 13 seconds and then throwing, that's when it gets to be an issue. And that's why I think a lot of people want to look into changing that type of thing.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that's when I was kind of about to, one other point that I was about to get to. You talk about the burden ball in this case is kind of at the ref's discretion, or the shot clock's discretion in this case, and I think that it just kind of puts room for error in terms of people's perceptions. When you take, and not to say that we don't already have that issue with the LAZ specifically, but with the LAZ, we already kind of have an understood principle that, generally speaking, it should be within like a 2-foot range or 2 to 3 foot range of a player. Whereas with the burden ball thing, it's kind of like, do we start counting after a 5-second delay, 10-second delay, 2-second delay? And that's kind of where play can change from game to game, and it shouldn't be. It should be consistent with the calling in that sense.
Dylan, what do you think? Or Felix?
Yeah, I have a thought as far as when there's low numbers. So like Hunter was saying, if one side only has one player left in and the other team purposefully just throws all the balls over there, forcing him to have to forfeit up to 5 balls, like that's a lot to ask of someone in 10 seconds, obviously. So what if there was a situation, like right now we have the 5-man rule where the shot clock goes down to 10 seconds. If we did the 3-man rule, there's a burden ball rule in effect, and once it goes down to 3-man, you don't have to get rid of the burden. Your side does not have to get rid of the burden. They just have to make a throw every 10 seconds.
I suppose that could work, but then when you get down to that point, we talked about the reason, one of the big pros, I would say, of the burden ball is eliminating the LAZ. So now when you have your -3 person and you say you have to make a throw, do they now have to make it into the LAZ, or are they just kind of able to roll it over and get rid of it in this case?
I'm not really sure. I literally just thought of this, so
Yeah.
there could be a situation in which we could talk about the LAZ only exists when you have less than 3 players. I don't know, but I'm just spitballing here. But I just thought of that when you said that, because I had not thought of that situation. In Elite with the 6-on-6 and only 6 balls, if you have the burden and you only have 1 player on your side, it's a lot easier to get rid of 3 balls than it is to get rid of 5.
Exactly.
And especially on a smaller court. So it works in that league. Since we have such a large court, and the balls could be everywhere, it would be tough to forfeit that many balls. So I'm not entirely sure. This obviously, we can discuss options like that, but that was just my thought.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, for Mayday, none of you guys happened to come out, but Mayday we did essentially 2 versions of the burden, whereas one was you just had to throw a ball. If you had burden clock going on your team, then your team had to throw just 1 ball, to throw any ball. And then we also had the traditional one where you had to give up the original majority. And it's like 50-50 of rolling balls over and throwing people, but most people were trying to throw the ball to get people out. And it was like 8-on-8, something like that, with 7 or 8 balls. There was a majority. It was an odd number, so we could have a majority, an easy majority without a color issue. I don't know. It worked weird. A lot of the people didn't like it. Tyler and Nico from DePaul, very strong Elite players, they wanted to bring it in as a sort of exhibition match to see how the rule would work. And I think I saw a lot of stuff we could do to kind of improve it. Mainly just Dylan's majority, so like you have to give up the original majority, and the burden clock is not in effect all the time. It's only in discretion for the burden clocker or the head ref, because usually it functions as a head ref and an assistant ref, and maybe we would have an A ref, head ref, and shot clocker, and only go a 3-man team, and give the ref some credit to kind of determine when a team is milking the clock. But most of the time, people were throwing back and forth and just trying to get people out, which is normal, and not trying to milk the clock, because we also had a kind of clock issue on that too. Like games couldn't go past 20 minutes or something.
Gotcha. And I guess the other thing that I noticed with it, at least when we tested it out, one of the reasons that you guys, and you've touched on it already, one of the reasons you want to implement this is because you want to eliminate stalling games, and you want people to, you want more action plays essentially. And from the way that I saw it, it doesn't really eliminate stalling; it just changes how stalling is done. So let's say, for example, like I was talking about with my one-on-one situation, um, you can say in this case the balls are pretty even split, 5 and 4 between the one-on-one players. However, both of the players on either side know that they are one, weak throwers, but two, also great catchers. And so neither one of them really wants to make an honest attempt to throw. They just kind of will kick. I mean, because this happened with us, they'll just kind of kick the ball back and forth between each other, and just until somebody just gets pissed off, and whatever the case may be. But in that sort of sense, we're just changing the way that stalling is done. Instead of just blocking and reset throwing, at people's feet, it's passing balls back and forth that still are not catchable.
The one thing I like about our current shot clock rule, and I'm not a big fan of the shot clock rule for a very, very long time. I used to, DePaul brought up a stall clock, which is just like if any action happened on the receiving end or on the, it was just as long as the game keeps going, it's just the officials' ability to, say, oh, that team's stalling, so, which is a little subjective, but I think officials are supposed to be neutral in general. Like I think you're supposed to give an alumni official, like the benefit of the doubt that they're going to play it fair, because that's part of the job description. And the one thing I like about our shot clock rule is like it doesn't focus all on throwing. Like the throwing to reset the shot clock is nice, but you have to get it in the area of the person so the person can have a play on it, which I think the strength of it is it's a dual thing. So it's defense and offense, whereas the burden rule is like at its core purely offense in order to get a ball. And yeah, I don't know. Dylan might have something about it, or somebody else, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. I can't tell if they're still online or not.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
One thing I do like about the burden rule is it cuts down on the number of officials that we need for refereeing games, because right now we have to have 2 shot clock counters, a head ref, and ideally an assistant ref. If we're able to just have the burden ball, we only need 1 person to count. So that'll save us $10 per game at nationals, just for instance. And if we have, I think we had 50-something games at nationals this year, that's $500 that we save. And that means that's lower cost for the teams and everything like that. We can spend the money on other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah.
Dylan, you're back unmuted, so what were you going to say? Maybe.
Dylan?
To me?
Yeah.
So right now there's a big trend.
We're losing them, guys.
Yeah.
Petoskey
is not known for its internet connectivity.
I see.
All right, so let's splice out a quick 5-minute conversation for the attack line.
Okay.
So I'll introduce it real quick. Kevin Bailey proposed that we change the distance of the attack line from the baseline. So right now it's currently defined as 30 feet. In the preferential vote that teams will be getting soon in a couple days, it'll be choosing between 25 feet, 28 feet, and 30 feet from the baseline. 30 feet being current. So it'll be a preferential vote. You could choose your preference on those three, and I'll give you a small why they're there. So 25 feet is from the baseline to the top of the three-point arc or the top of the key and the half circle in a basketball court. Very easily readable. 28 feet is actually the coaching mark. So on the sideline, there's 28 feet up from the baseline. So that's actually even easier for court markings as long as you have it. It's mandated for NCAA courts and NBA courts. And then also 30 feet, which the reason why it's 30 feet right now is essentially because DePaul Dodgeball's courts at the Ray Meyer are shorter than 94 feet. They're like 85 feet or something. They're like, kind of school gym size, grade school gym. And the volleyball court happens to sit inside the middle of the court, so it happens to be 30 plus 20 plus 30. And a tack line on a volleyball court is 10 feet past the half-court line.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of numbers. I should have a diagram to go with this, but this is a radio show, so we don't get it. That's the only reason why it's there, is because it's pretty much DePaul's courts and all the other small courts very early on in the league happened to have volleyball courts, and they weren't that short. So it ended up being the 30 feet of that half-court line, and then we just kept that. And the neutral zone could get larger as a normal court happens, because at DePaul it's only 20 feet big, but at other courts, like a regular NCAA court, it is 94 feet, which is 34 feet big. That's it.
That's cool.
The explanation. So, comment away.
Do you want to start, Felix, or?
Sure. I mean, I like the fact that we want to move the attack line forward. I can see the benefit in it. It's more, there's more of a wow factor because it looks like everyone's throwing a lot harder because there's 5 feet less that the ball has to travel. So I mean, it's good for audience. As far as it changing the style of the game, I'm not sure how big of a difference it will make. But I really don't have an opinion on this particular rule change. I'm interested to see what everyone else thinks. Like I said, I think the only benefit would be the wow factor, but really it's not going to make that big of a difference in my mind.
As far as I go, I don't want to move it closer because I see all the injuries that Elite has, and it's just people. Obviously they're posting the bad stuff on Facebook, but I see all the injuries they have, and their line is like 20 feet non-pinch and 25 feet pinch. I think that's a little bit too dangerous. The ball is going too fast and not enough time for you to dodge it safely, and that's just my concern.
Yeah.
So I don't want to move it up. I can move it to 28 feet because that sounds like a really easy court marking. But that's just my opinion. I don't want to do it.
I got my first black eye from dodgeball in round 2 of Elite this year from, or I guess it was round 1 from Kevin Bailey.
Yeah.
He caught me in the face pretty good. That was my first black eye in 12 years of playing. So
yeah, and I actually contacted them about getting like an injury tracking together because the NCAA tracks their injuries. Teams are required to submit any injury reports that happen on the court or during practice and stuff like that. And they didn't get back to me, so no comments from Elite Dodgeball.
Maybe they wanted to hide it.
I don't know. I mean, they should be tracking it from a legal perspective, and it's not that hard. You just have the hoster take a little, half sheet of paper and say what the incident was and what happened, and how it was treated. Very, very simple. It's what we require. And what almost any university will require of a club sport that an injury happens. Nothing. It's really not that big.
No.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Anyways,
Hunter?
Yeah, I agree that I don't like the 25-foot proposal, and it was more or less for the same reasons that you were saying. And then additionally, on top of that, I think that it can also deter and intimidate brand new teams, especially because some of them will come in and you might have a team that doesn't even pinch at all, perhaps, when they first jump into the league, and so they don't know what a pinch ball movement looks like or how fast it can actually come, and then they hop into a court with a 25-foot zone, and you talk about, let's say, a guy like Doug Schilling, for example, big, long kid too, throws really hard. He's reaching over when for his throw. That's an extra foot for him, 24 feet on top of he's throwing probably 70 miles an hour, with movement, and that just, I mean, not to say that you should ever, be playing scared in the first place. I mean, you have to expect to get hit when you come out and play dodgeball, but if you're a brand new player and you get smacked like that, you kind of say, why do I want to keep coming out to something like this?
Sure.
And so the 30
yeah, go ahead.
And so the 30-foot line, I think, definitely helps for newer teams. But I do kind of side with the idea of moving it up to 28. I didn't know about the whole court dimensions with the coaching box like you had, so that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways, there are easy ways to do it, and we wouldn't do 27 or 26 because it's like impossible to do that on a regular court. So 28 is okay because the coaching box is on most courts. It's not on a lot of courts. It's definitely not on DePaul or any of your small ones. But so on those courts, it would have the 30 marking. That's why it's there, because it's more usual. But even now, when they play at Grand Valley's Giant Stadium, I mean, it's their regular thing. They have to measure out 2 feet from that 28 mark to get 30 feet because their volleyball court doesn't go that far because they're a full 94 feet court. It's just something. I don't know. It's there. If anything, a 25-foot line will definitely get people out more quickly, more regularly. It'll speed up the game. That's what it'll do. So,
Yeah.
do we want that? The teams will have to decide.
One thing I noticed also, this is my first season playing Elite, but when I couldn't hit people for the first few games playing pinch with 25 feet because I played for so long at 30 feet and my ball curves when I throw it. And so the curve was all off. And so I was really inaccurate for the first round, and it was kind of disheartening because I'm used to hitting people, but it kept curving right in front of them.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it's not even like a difference of 5 feet, because of people in Elite stand different than people on an NCDA court. They stand different from the baseline, so it's even farther from Elite, that a greater discrepancy between the thing. Probably like 5-8 feet, but still, that's one person's LAZ, normally LAZ thing. So,
right.
Any closing comments on that? I think we touched everything on that.
I do want to say one thing about the burden ball. I just want to full disclosure on that, but like it didn't pass to be considered for a vote during the captain's meeting, but I'm pushing it to a vote as an executive decision because I think it's really important for the league, and I wouldn't do this for any rule that I just really feel like it's important, and it's something that we need to consider and think about more than
I think it was pretty close.
10 minutes
it was
we talked
almost
about.
Halfway.
Yeah, it was my record shows a 9-8 vote, so it was the difference of 1 vote.
Yeah.
And most of the teams that voted against it are brand new teams, and they're new teams that don't even pay dues yet, and so they haven't been in the league long enough to understand some of the complexities of the game. And so I just wanted a full disclosure on that I'm pushing this through as an executive decision because I really feel like it's something we should consider further.
Okay. So, Hunter, do you have any closing comments on the burden?
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I'll say that I was definitely one of the people who was against it even before we had implemented it, and more so because not to say that I don't see benefits of it. I do. Like eliminating LAZ takes away refs' discretion. in that regard. And in you guys' case, the finances of the league, having less refs can also be beneficial there. But to that counter argument, on the other side of the coin, now you also have one less ref making calls during a match, and that can eliminate another set of eyes, to be able to help out head or assistant ref in that instance. So, besides just nationals games, we're talking about, just regular tournaments, say at, VCU or Maryland or whoever during the season, where we're not paying the refs anyways. It's kind of like, like I said, you got less eyes on the court now to be able to get, the right calls.
Yeah, I think it frees up, if you're going to go with a traditional four-man team, it frees up one person to actually do eye stuff than having to. It's actually more people. I'm going to disagree with you because there's actually more people doing stuff. So like as a burden of clock, and I've done it in Elite and I've done it in Mayday, it is so much easier just to quickly count the balls on either side and keep track of where they're throwing, and then also keep track of if there's any plays going on. So like we'd still have that the primary responsibility of that burden shot clock timekeeper, whatever we call it. To be the primary, count those balls and count the burden. But most of the time, they're going to be able to do a lot more stuff than a regular timekeeper now does. It's just, and then, if we still have 4 people, we'll have a judge on the side, which there's no limit to the amount of people you can have reffing a dodgeball court. It's just the amount of people that call stuff. So there's two refs and 2 keepers, timekeepers, and then as many judges as you need. And for the last game at Nationals, which is the championship match, we usually have a 6-man crew. And at Ohio State, we had an 8-man crew. We had 4 corner judges, 2 timekeepers, a ref, and an assistant ref, and head ref.
We had to do that when we played at Maryland for their last tournament before Nationals last year, because people kept getting fed up about saying people were close or off of the baseline or whatever, so we just kind of threw people out there. But I get your argument too, so I understand that.
Okay, so that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank both of you for sticking around, and Dylan, I'm going to make a poopy face because he left, but it's not his fault. But Dylan smells.
All right, thanks, guys.
I said, do you want me to drive?
So this is Average Joe's podcast. I'm Zygmunt Sabloni, and thank you all.